All right, hey, I'm Jonathan Singer, Facebook Live here from Columbia University.
I'm Beth Counselman Carpenter. So nice to see all of you with us today.
Yeah, this is an exciting moment in social work history. This is
critical.
Critical. Mark the calendar, people. This is the day. This is the time when we just sort of break the mold on what social work and technology looks like.
That's right. Living it out.
So I'm actually I'm here at Columbia University, even though I'm a professor of social work at Loyola University in Chicago. I'm here because I have the great honor to give a talk tonight on suicide, cyberbullying, and social media. And Beth is going to be talking with me at that talk.
Yes, we are so excited that Jonathan's here as part of our Austin Lecture Series. And for those of you who are local, we hope you can join us in the building. For those of you far away, please live stream with us, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time to 8 o'clock. Jonathan's going to be speaking about his research, practice, policy, and really this is such a salient topic for social workers today. Desmond Patton will be joining us to talk about his research as the other discussant. And I'll be talking about the direct practice aspect and some case studies with clinical issues that pertain exactly to social work and cyberbullying.
Yeah, and so what we're doing here today is we're going to spend a little bit of time just talking about social work and technology. You know, social work and technology is this, it's this area where like if you're in it, right?
Yes.
You love it. You're like, right?
Yes, you kind of geek out about it.
Exactly.
And you find someone else who's really into it. You're like, oh, let's talk about social work and technology.
Right.
But if you talk to someone who it's not their wheelhouse, they're not quite sure where to begin.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll just start out by saying that I think one of the big reasons why social workers should be interested in technology is because our clients are using technology. And we will end up using technology inadvertently if we're not doing it intentionally. Faye Mishna out of Toronto, she's the dean, but she's also a great researcher. She's been doing a project for the last few years looking at technology creep. So how is it that technology creeps into social work practice? And what she found was that in the first wave of data, she had social workers saying, yeah, I never intended to text my clients. But, you know, they texted me in a crisis, and of course I had to respond. So, one hand, great, you're responding to your clients in crisis. Yep. On the other hand, yow, like you didn't set up any parameters. You don't know if it's secure. Like, what does this mean for your records? Do you need to, like, screenshot the text? Like, what do you do? So, being very intentional about what you're doing and knowing why you're doing it and how you're doing it and talking about it with your clients in advance provides that informed consent. So, anyway. Got to know about it.
Yes, you know, what are the ethics of this? How do we have salient conversations about someone's mental health and safety when you're texting? What platforms can you use? What about actually conducting therapy online? Can you have a session through text? Can you have a session through something like Doxy or through Skype? What does that look like? How do you get constituents to come into your programs? What about digital marketing of clinical practice? What happens when everyone's sitting in a group and they're all on their phones? What if someone's taking a selfie in group and starts texting it to someone sitting across the room? You know, those are all questions that are happening literally day in and day out.
When somebody pulls out their phone, puts it on the table, you're like, oh, that's great. They're not actually using their phone. And then you realize they've recorded the entire session. What about that?
Right, or
there's nobody out there.
You're just pointing
at the phone. There you go.
13.
Excellent. Or what happens when you collect phones at the beginning of a group, and what is that? And the group rebels and says, we all need our phones. We have to be talking to people, and why can't we be talking to each other? And why can't we be talking to you? What happens when you have a client who friends you on Facebook or wants to start sharing Snap stories with you?
Yeah, and I think so I think there are some things it's pretty clear, like, okay, don't friend your clients. Great. But increasingly people are using Facebook, there are groups, there are things that you are associated with, maybe as a professional, but also you have your personal profile. And maybe your clients' networks intersect with those networks. So suddenly the boundaries get a little bit blurry. And I think that's one of the big challenges today and moving forward with certainly social media and social work.
Right, and I think sometimes we're always focusing on what are the ethical challenges, what about consent, and that detracts from what are the positives. Like, we can use social media in such powerful ways to tap into rural populations, into where someone may not be able to drive 2 hours to get to a clinician or participate in a group. There's so much that we can harness as practitioners to get the word out there. And in terms of conducting research, when I was working on my dissertation, I had no problem getting urban participants to sit down with me, but there were women who were in rural New Jersey and in Montana who had very important stories to tell that fortunately through the magic of Skype we're able to tell them, where we didn't even have access to that 10 years ago. So I think Jonathan and I like to highlight that there's so many opportunities for us to really take advantage of in blending something that might not at first seem like it's a natural blend.
Yeah, and I think one of the other reasons why this is an important topic for social workers to think about is that right now, social workers tend to use products that are developed by non-social workers, right? So all the things that we've mentioned are pretty much, programmers, probably in Silicon Valley, came up with a program, and now we are using it. But in 50 years from now, there should be no question that the apps, the programs, the technologies that we're using were co-created by social work, other mental health professionals, and programmers, engineers, physicists, all those groups. There has to be a combination of this, but there's never going to be a combination of knowing what's best for our clients with what works best in technology unless we actually come to the same table, unless we sit down and do this. And there are a couple of programs out there that are now being intentional about pairing social workers with engineers, for example, at the University of Toronto. I know it sounds like I'm shilling for the University of Toronto, but it's a great school. I have nothing to do with them. But they actually have a faculty position that they're hiring for that is a joint appointment with social work and I think engineering, right? Because of this issue of technology. So every time you go out there and you're working with your clients and they bring up something, ask yourself, is there a technological solution for it? If not, would that be valuable? Just for this one client or maybe for all clients? You don't have to know how to create an app.
Nope.
You don't have to know anything about programming. But there are tons of people out there who do. Some of them don't actually care at all about other people. They just care about money. But most of them do care about other people. And most programmers that I've met are like, I would love to do something that I knew at the end of the day was saving somebody's life, was keeping somebody out of harm's way, that was helping them feel better. Like, there is a real sense of social mission, and programmers and folks in the technology arena don't necessarily get that, right? And so there's a real space for this partnership.
Absolutely. And last semester, it sounds intimidating, like develop an app. Where do you start? Last semester, I had 20 second-year MSW students who all built technologically salient products for the end of the semester. So about half of them created websites or blogs that they built from scratch. 4 of them created the framework for their own apps. Another 4 created training videos for other social workers and their clients. And these were social work students with no engineering background, no computer programming background, who, with a couple of sessions in conjunction with the Center for Teaching and Learning, learned how to literally build the framework. One particular student wanted a bilingual blog that was originally written in Spanish and then translated to English. Of her own accord, she went out into the community, found an artist to design all of the artwork, which was then shown in the background of the website, which was absolutely amazing. The people who cross-checked the language, it was about family therapy, were her clients. And they said, yes, this is exactly the phrasing we were looking for. So it was really this grassroots organization project, and they did it in the span of 14 weeks. Technology is so much easier than we think it is. It's just finding the people who can guide us through the steps.
Yeah. So I think that's beautiful. I think it's great that in 14 weeks that she was able to design this website, that people were able to sort of get the basics of an app. And just to give some context, so in 20 years from now, it's going to be that much easier for folks to do it. Now, 20 years ago, I was part of a project at the University of Texas at Austin in 1996 where I was teaching MSW students how to build websites. We would open up Notepad, and we would type out the HTML, and then we would save it, and then we would upload it to the server. And the reason we were doing this was to see if there was a way in which creating a web page could help social work students develop professional use of self. So you have to make decisions about what graphics you put on there, right? How are you presenting yourself? What links do you have on there? What are your professional affiliations? What sort of text do you have on there? Your message, right? How do you portray yourself in words and all those sorts of things? All the things that social workers need to do to be professionals. And the transition from non-social worker to social worker is a process. And can this happen through technology? Now, today, people don't even think about hand coding websites. Like, it's just like, and thank goodness, because the project was great idea, but it literally took us 16 weeks for folks to get to the point where they actually had a crappy looking website up. Right. Now somebody can develop an app in 16 weeks. Absolutely. Right? Totally different. And so there are two things with this. One, technology, the usability and the ease and accessibility of technology only gets better. And number two, if you are thinking, I don't know how to do this, just know that there are people out there, social workers, who are doing this. And you don't have to think, oh, I'm going to build the app that's going to be 1 million downloads on the App Store and blah, blah, blah. You can think about, is there something that I need for my clients? And I'm just going to do that for my clients. Like, it's sort of like a closed system, right? This is what I'm doing. And so I think these are all ways that we can benefit as social workers from thinking about how we use technology.
Absolutely. And how do we communicate with each other? If there's a client or a group or a program, we're not sure, has this been done? How well did it work? Did it not work? What are the ethical considerations I should have? You know, most of us will Google something, right? And sometimes it'll take us to Google Scholar. Sometimes it will take us to someone's faculty page. I mean, we can harness technology to really increase our communication so that if we don't know how to do it or aren't sure if it's been done, to find someone who has to walk us through those steps.
Important, because if you don't know, the field of social work has embarked on these grand challenges. So there are 12 grand challenges for social work, and these grew out of the concept of grand challenges, which is like, in the next 10 years, if we funnel resources and we're really focused, are there things that we can achieve that would improve the world, right? And one of the grand challenges for social work is harnessing technology for social good. And right now, there are 2 working papers. One of them is on big data, which is actually more about harnessing administrative data sets for like child welfare and things like that. And then there's another one that's more broadly about practice and technology. And I don't know. I totally forgot what I was going to say.
The big projects about with the grand challenges, kind of right. How are we harnessing it, both big picture and I think micro.
Thank you.
Sure.
And so, so these papers were written. There's a lot of kind of talks about policy, and then of course there are scholars, which academics spend a lot of time on research. But these things are not going to actually work. None of the 12 grand challenges are actually going to work if we don't have practitioners on board with this. If we don't actually have people in the field, students or people after their programs, who are actually saying, yes, I do want to think about how to use technology, how to harness technology for social good. It's just not going to happen, because then you're going to get like 50 people in an ivory tower somewhere being like, this is a great idea, which we do a lot.
We can get very, big steel grate in front of it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Well, and if we even look at sort of the landscape, at least for North America, how much social organizing has happened in the recent months, and half the time it will
Since
be
the Trump election?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Where's everyone going to meet? And here in New York City, there's going to be a rally at Columbus Circle, and I'll have a student who gets something tweeted to them who at break will say, hey, did you know there's going to be a Columbus Circle rally? Who's going? And all of a sudden that reaches the 20, 40 students that are here. It reaches me. I announce it in my next class. And next thing you know, there are 3,000 people in Columbus Circle, protesting in front of Trump Tower.
Right.
So,
which is amazing. And
it happens that fast.
And it's something that we should use regardless of who's in office, regardless of
Yes.
what level they are in office, right? Using technology for social activism is super important. And we've been talking sort of more in terms of direct practice, but uses of technology for sort of the meso and the macro level of social work, so important. The getting warm bodies out there, making phone calls. I mean, when I was getting my MSW back in the mid '90s, the way that lobbying happened in Austin was that you would have lobbyists going to the state capitol, and they would get pages, right? They'd carry pagers, and they would go to a phone and they'd make a call.
Right.
And then at the end of the day, they would type up stuff that needed to be typed up, and they would fax it to thousands of people. They had these, right? And I mean, that was the technology of the day, right? And so there was this delay. But these days, this instant advocacy, if every single social work student during orientation was given the names and numbers of all of the important politicians that they needed to contact on a regular basis, and they said, we're going to spend 5 minutes for you to sit in the auditorium and put these numbers into your phone, then we could have 50,000 students across the country at any given time being given alerts about how to contact representatives. They wouldn't have to go online to even look it up. They'd just go on their phone and they'd make a call, right? That's incredible. Like, that's unbelievable. Do we do it? No.
No, and that's where the disconnect still is. And I think that's where there's, well, I'm not sure how to make it happen. Well, at some point we just have to take that step.
Yeah.
And I think as educators with the new generation of social work students, it's key. But for those of you out there who are direct practitioners who graduated a long time ago, think about how often maybe you're talking about mood charting with your client, and you know that your client doesn't want to, have you print something out and take it home and bring it back in.
Now, can you tell them what mood charting is?
In a sentence or less?
In a sentence or less,
sure.
Yeah.
So someone's really been struggling, let's say, with depressive symptoms and trouble sleeping, but they can't quantify it. So traditionally, I would go online anyway, and print out a mood chart that would say hours slept, and it would sort of be a ranking of mood, up to +2, which is a very elevated mood, down to -2, very depressed mood. And there's also usually traditionally spaces for medication taken that day, weight, if you're tracking weight gain or weight loss, hours of sleep. And over the 30 to 31 days, you could see up and down the numerical measurements of mood. Well, it would require printing it out, carrying it around with you, filling it out. There was usually morning, midday, and evening categories to fill in. So you'd always have to have a pen, and you'd always have to have it with you.
And you'd want to be able to pull it out.
Like, oh, I'm in a faculty meeting. I'm going to check I'm -2. Like,
which is not uncommon for faculty. No. It's another story.
So, getting a client to really buy in to filling out something like that was cumbersome. And maybe you got 16 days of data out of the 31, but you'd get 3 and then you'd forget for a week. Now it's something you can download on your phone. Your Fitbit is tracking how much sleep. Apple Watch. So why aren't we using those? So I would challenge those of you who are direct practitioners out there, look at the apps that are available, whether it is mood charting, the mindfulness meditation apps that are out there, using easily downloadable articles on Google Scholar about the modality you may be proposing or a program you're referring someone to. All you need to do is pull up something on your smartphone or your tablet. It doesn't mean that you and your client should be texting in session, to each other or anyone else necessarily, but it really is a window into so many resources at our fingertips.
Yeah, and I think this idea of what apps are available and how do they, how do we use them, speaks to this issue that in the future, social work is not going to be replaced by computers. There's not going to be artificial intelligence that, kind of like the ELISA program from the 1960s, which basically repeated back what people said. We're not going to have that kind of replacement of social workers. But I think for social workers to be as effective as they can, we need to learn to work alongside technology. So what are things that we're not very good at, but that technology is great at? Right? And one of the things is helping people track what's going on in their lives, right? I can't tell you how many hours I slept last night. I actually don't know. But you know who does? My watch. My watch knows how many hours I slept. And not only does it know how many hours I slept, it can also tell me whether it was sort of fitful or restful, right? Mm-hmm. So it knows based on my movement, if I've been sort of still for 45 minutes, it tracks that as sort of deep sleep, right? But if I'm moving around a lot, light sleep. One of the biggest sort of precipitants of suicide risk is poor sleep. If you were working with somebody and you knew, oh, for the last week, their sleep has been getting worse and worse and worse. This is a teenager that really should be getting 8 hours of sleep. Typically they get 6, but this one's only been getting 2 or 3. You wouldn't even have to wait for the referral from the school saying Johnny got in trouble because he threw something. You'd be able to be like, hey, I'm going to call Johnny in because he hasn't been getting sleep, and I'm just going to have a conversation with him here, right? So you're working alongside with technology. Technology isn't telling you how to do your job, but it's saying, I'm going to track something that you can't even track. Johnny can't track it, but technology can. And so now you can then use that information to do what it is that you do. The downside, of course, is what happens if you have that information and you haven't done anything with it. And that's where we are today in social work and ethics.
Yes.
we have not addressed that adequately.
No, and it's a really important conversation to have. I often, our clients' phones allows a window into their world. So we're going to be talking a lot more about cyberbullying this evening, but I'll have clients who will say, I got left out of so-and-so Snap story. I got somebody was posting this, and this on Instagram, and they were saying my besties, and it's that I'm their bestie. Why are they tagging all these people? And I'll say, oh, can you pull it up? Let me take, and we'll look at it together. And as the practitioner, I am mining it for content. What is being said? What are the comments below it? And going through it with my client. But that puts the onus on me that if there's something in there, I need to be doing something about it. If there's something concerning, then we have to have a direct conversation of what's our safety plan? Who else are you talking to about this? Who else is involved? And also considering the systems. Does the school know? Do the parents know? Do the parents of the kids who are tagging know or not? And that, again, that comes down to what our responsibility is, especially with duty to warn. So it allows us to really see a much more colorful world of our client's life, but we have to be prepared to follow up when that's shared with us. Mm-hmm.
And that raises organizational issues. It raises issues of sort of legislators, right? And what are the laws on the books in terms of what is our scope of practice? I think one of the big issues when you're working with folks, when you're working with kids and you're an employee of a school is what are your rights and responsibilities after school hours? It's a huge issue, right? Because you can have cyberbullying, you can have not cyberbullying, but you can have communication that occurs online outside of school hours that 100% affects what goes on during school hours.
Absolutely.
But you would have to sort of basically go into somebody's home to be like, well, wait, this is an issue. And they're like, do not come into my home.
Right.
This is my house. Yes. This is not school. And all of those things are still up for grabs. So, people use the term Wild West. I think it's not the best term for it, but there is a lot of unknowns that we have to figure out. And if social workers are not coming to the table, to have this conversation and figure it out. Somebody else is going to figure it out for us, which is hugely problematic.
Absolutely. Or there will be some sort of sentinel event which will force us to organize afterwards, and we certainly don't want that either.
My God, no.
Could I field some questions
Sure.
from the audience? So
Yeah.
one was about live sessions. They're interested how online social work happens. And Craig, your comment got cut off on our screen. You said, are tech companies the only ones who could, I'm assuming, create the apps? I'm not sure if your question is about like the legality of creating an app for social work and who can do that, but if you want to type out the rest of it maybe, or retype it out, that would be helpful. But yeah, I mean, we just had an event on telehealth, so if you want to spend a little time talking about online sessions.
Sure. So telebehavioral health, for those of you who are interested in doing your own research in it, is a very rapidly exploding field. And there are some best practices that are out there. NASW has a framework. It's not a tight one, but some general guidelines. And one of the things you really have to consider is confidentiality and also HIPAA compliance. There are certain platforms that you can download and pay a small fee for. Doxy is one of them. And for those of you who are with us, Professor Ortega spoke about that, which is a secure, it's literally a virtual meeting room that's password protected, where you would meet and have a conversation like this through a screen. My practice experience has been some of my clients were intimidated by that, didn't want to have Doxy on, let's say, their work computer, or if they were calling in from work. So I tend to use Skype or FaceTime, but my clients also sign as informed a consent as we can that I cannot protect the information digitally. And also with my clients who have active or passive suicidal ideation or have recently been discharged from an inpatient unit, I like to see someone live. I like to sit there and talk about a safety plan and ongoing treatment. And that model of being together in the room, I'll usually do for 6 to 8 weeks following discharge. Because again, you know, it's a person's life. So I'm mindful about how I use it for someone who's been stable, who may be traveling or is a college student, young adult, someone who has moved for work. I'm very comfortable using Skype and FaceTime for sessions, but I'm also very transparent. And I think as social workers, we have to be very open in saying, I can't protect this information. So when we meet in Skype, there's a shared liability between us that there could be a hacker somewhere, you know, tapping into it. And let's talk about your comfort level and what that means for our work together.
And the HIPAA compliant platform is Doxy, and that's spelled...
Doxy is D-O-X-Y.
D-O-X-Y, okay.
And
Someone asked for the spelling.
it is not HIPAA compliant, but it is encrypted. So we don't really have clear parameters on technology and HIPAA compliance in clinical sessions. We do with electronic medical records and documentation. It's a gray area, like you said, a little bit. It's uncharted territories.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that are really interested in this issue, right? And so it's not that social workers are the only ones, but mental health professionals across the country, actually around the world, are trying to grapple with this idea of online services. And Beth, I really like what you said about I can provide online services, but there are times where I want to provide face-to-face services, and having those agreements set up in advance. I see that as working with technology, right? Making sure that we're using the best modality for the situation. Now, I will say that you can do amazing crisis services online, right? There's nothing that keeps you from doing great crisis work online. In fact, at the end of the day, when we all go home, what do? We say after hours, right?
Right. Please, contact us at this number, or dial 911, or go to your nearest emergency room. At least that's what my voicemail says.
Yeah, exactly. And then people get contacted with crisis units.
Yep.
Right. So the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, crisis text line, all these things these are all kind of not face-to-face ways of doing crisis intervention, but they have their limitations, right? You talk to anybody that does crisis hotline work, and they say, yes, there's this perpetual kind of panic about what happens if the person's line goes away, right? And we're no longer connected to them. Or if you're texting with somebody, what happens if they don't respond for 30 seconds?
And you're waiting for the little dots to come up.
You know? And so these are all things that you have to think through. It doesn't mean you can't do it, but you have to think through them and see what's reasonable. Now, one thing that I'll say is that technology, the National Association of Social Workers, CSWE, the Association of Social Work Boards, are coming up with the final draft or the final updated technology standards.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness is right. I'm curious to see what they actually look like. The draft that they submitted for public commentary maybe 6 months ago at this point was a total disaster. And I'm happy to be on record saying that. I know that there are a lot of fears and concerns about technology. My hope is that this final draft this final statement will actually provide guidance for social workers around the use of technology. If for whatever reason it comes out and you've been thinking about technology and it doesn't seem to work, that's fine. This is a conversation we need to have. Engage with the document, because I can tell you who is going to engage with the document: lawyers. Lawyers will engage with the document. So if we're not engaging with it and we're not saying, well, yes, but no, and we need to update this and fix this and lobby for this to be changed, somebody's going to call you up on the stand and say, hey, by the way, we see that in the NASW technology practice standards, it says A, B, and C, but you did X, Y, and Z. How do you explain yourself?
Yes, and that's not a position any of us would like to be in.
No.
If we could avoid it.
That's right. Go ahead.
I was just saying another question we had. Craig said, I love the idea of an app and I'm thinking about what types of information I could have on the app. I am just not sure how to create the app. Are tech companies the only ones who could develop it, or is that something that you could do on your own?
No, you can totally do it on your own. I mean, you have to learn, right? And so there's a learning process, and it depends on how complicated you want it to be, and sort of how many users, and like there are all of these questions. But in terms of an app, I mean, if you've ever created a web page, in a sense, as long as it fits on your mobile device, like that could be considered an app because it's got functionality and you can use it in a mobile device, right? That's very basic, but that's kind of the idea.
Basically, you can use a program. It's called wireframes, but what you want to think through is, what is it that I want to see? What are the images I want to see? What are the words that I want to read? And how would I want this shared with someone else? So it forces us, I think, as practitioners, in a lovely way, to really think through our standards of practice. You know, are we really being culturally competent in what we're showing, in what we're saying, in how we're going to deliver this? How is it? So I think it's really thinking about it multidimensionally. And if you have that down, then everything else will fall into place, and then you can kind of build it. It almost looks like an old school flip book, what you would do with wireframes. And so it's literally like flipping the book and you would see it come together, and that's what an app comes from. So I would encourage you to reach out to someone in your community who has some tech experience, who can talk to you about the visual aspect, whether it's, a graphic artist, and then speaking to someone who's a programmer who does coding, and have conversations with them, and then try your hand at it. See what works and what doesn't.
And also you can go online and say, find relatively inexpensive kind of overview tutorials on how to create an app.
Yeah.
And I would say, those are reasonable things to do. I mean, you don't want to do the one that says, pay $500 to learn how to create an app. No. And then at the end of the day, you have to pay us another $1,000 to get the app. Like, that's ridiculous. But, if there's something out there that's going to cost you $5, $10, $20, like on Udemy or any of those sites where you can do online education, that's a great way of just doing a little tutorial.
Sophie asked, do you see the boundaries of state licensure as a barrier to increasing access to clients in remote areas, or what are your thoughts on this?
This came up in our telebehavioral health conversation too, and So for those of you who are not from New York and Chicago, check your state licenses directly, because certain insurance companies require that you be licensed in the state where you are providing services in which the client resides. So I happen to be licensed in multiple states, which is helpful to me as a practitioner. But if I have a client who moves to certain states, I can't bill their insurance. It doesn't mean I can't provide services, but we have to come up with a sliding scale or private pay, which leads to kind of greater conversations. So make sure from an insurance standpoint and your state of licensure standpoint that you look into that.
Yeah, well, and I think this is really important because the Constitution of the United States says that professions are regulated by the states, right? And so we're never going to get federal licensure. This is an important thing to remember. So we're never going to have, like, even though everybody uses the same social work licensing tests, right? I think because even California bought into the ASWB one.
They did.
And so I literally think every single social worker in the United States actually takes the same tests, but licensing still is regulated state by state. And what that means is that your license in your state only covers you in your state. Now, this issue of where is the client, does the state consider that services are provided where the therapist is, right, the social worker is, or the client? Like, that's an issue that you have to look into. What's coming down the pike, and this is being modeled by medicine, is that you have multi-state PACs, right, compacts, interstate license agreements. So, for example, most states will say for a brief short term, like maybe 90 days, you can provide services to somebody that was a resident but is now somewhere else. And this provides some flexibility. But what you can't do is you can't say, I live in New York, I live in Illinois, I live in California, I'm going to hang up a shingle and say, anybody in the United States, I'll do online therapy with you, no problem. That's going to get you into a lot of trouble. I mean, there's the licensure reason and the liability insurance reason, but also, if you're in California and you're doing therapy with somebody that's in Montana and there's a crisis and you actually don't know what the crisis services are locally and you don't know how to get in touch with this person and you have no sort of contact outside of your online environment, then you're not providing good services for them because they really need you. They really need something, and you're not going to be able to do that.
Right, and so knowing resources, right? So in technology bridges the gap that we can find out the resources in Montana, but who is someone who can lay eyes on that client or sit with them and be with them when they're in crisis? Mm-hmm. Again, that is our responsibility as the practitioners, and we have to be really mindful of that.
And so, this is something to think about legislatively. Mm-hmm. Keep your eyes on all the legislation that has to do with telehealth, that has to do with licensure. I will tell you that one of the things that's very scary for social work legislation is the minute so you might say, oh, well, why don't we just rewrite the laws around social work licensing and sort of what that means? The problem is, if you propose a new definition of what social work is, where it can be practiced, how it can be practiced, suddenly you have all of these other professions that come in and say, it's open season on social work and what is considered sort of protected practice. So right now, in many states, social work is a protected title, right? You can't call yourself a social worker unless you have a social work degree. Even something as basic as that could come under attack if somebody proposes legislation to change the way social work is practiced or the way that it's understood. And so talk to your legislators, talk to your local NASW.
Yes.
And make sure that you are aware of what all these policy issues are, so that when you really want to address this issue, you know how to do it from a policy level.
Yes, no, that's critical. I mean, we've fought to have the term social worker protected as someone who has gone through the training and the education and the licensing. So to open that up, I think it's a dicey conversation to have.
Terrifying.
Yes.
Yes. Were there other questions?
Yeah, I can field them.
Okay, great.
Desmond Patton actually had a question, but Desmond,
Desmond!
if you're still in the room, you might want to expand a little bit on the last part because it got cut off around particularly given our relationship. But maybe you can pull up the full one.
See.
We have a nifty little laptop here off to the side where we're looking at some questions.
In what ways might social workers be able to contribute to this conversation, particularly given our relationships with clients and communities?
And the conversation is there's a brewing conversation around artificial intelligence and ethics.
Yeah.
Would you can start. I'll follow up.
So I think that. So first of all, what is artificial intelligence? As somebody who got his MSW in the mid-90s,
Early 2000s.
all we knew about artificial intelligence was what we saw in the movies,
Yes.
right?
Haley Joel Osment.
There you go, nice. But I think that the idea around artificial intelligence is that it is essentially lines of computer code that are able to identify patterns and sort of create responses on the fly, right? Things that are not pre-programmed. And Facebook just announced that it was going to be using artificial intelligence to kind of monitor for suicide risk on a whole bunch of things, including Facebook Live, which is where we are now. And so the idea would be that there would be something running in the background, a program that would be running in the background that would be in real time monitoring things that were being said. So if we started talking about issues of suicide, if we started making statements that sounded like we were suicidal, this artificial intelligence would do something. I don't know exactly what it would do, but it would be able to do it in the same way that if a person was monitoring, they might be able to do something. So that's the idea behind artificial intelligence. Is there anything you want to add to that?
The one thing I read was
definition?
one of the alerts might be to alert the immediate friend base on Facebook. Your friend is in crisis, please reach out. That was the last article I read about it.
I think that's absolutely right. And so it would sort of broadcast. It would send a broadcast message. I think that the ethics around artificial intelligence and social work practice, or any sort of practice with people, is that we have to make sure that the artificial intelligence is created with our ethical framework in mind, which is why social workers have to be at the table. It's great that Facebook is doing this, and I actually know some of the folks who consult with Facebook or have in the past consulted with them around their suicide prevention things, and they're good people. And one of them is a social worker, which is great. But again, artificial intelligence is something that we create. So if we imbue it with our code of ethics and it's responding in ways that are consistent with our code of ethics, great. If it's not, because it hasn't been programmed to do that, then that could be problematic for us.
Right. I mean, it's conversations about duty to warn, informed consent, confidentiality. It's a very broad conversation to have, and I think it's our responsibility as social workers for it to start with us, because it could be used in a way that really benefits, our constituents. But on the flip side, it could also be very dangerous territory.
Yeah, and I think that I would love a future where there was something. So let's take Alexa. Right, or Google Home, right? One of these things where it's this thing, it sits in the middle of a table, and it's kind of voice activated, and there are, it's sort of always listening. Well, imagine if this thing was in homes where there was violence, and it was able to recognize patterns. I'm not saying recognize that an argument was happening, because at that point it's hard for anybody to intervene, right? Even the police, and that's their job, when there's an active. But to recognize patterns for when things might start to escalate, and then how to program that for then maybe it plays certain music, right? And you're like, oh, it's this calming, soothing music. Oh, it's Jerry Rafferty's, Right Down the Line. I love that tune. I haven't heard that in years, right? It's sort of a distraction. Or it could even be that there are specific things that get thrown out there, right? Certain phrases that it starts to say. Now, all of this is very like scary Big Brother-ish, but it is a possible use of artificial intelligence to work with folks in their daily lives.
Absolutely. And we know with suicide prevention, obviously decreasing isolation. Here's literally a tool that we have that can, you are a hopeless teenager who feels abandoned by their friends, not getting along with their parents, and does not feel like they have anywhere to turn. And they say it out loud and there's nobody listening. Here's somebody who's listening. And whether it's a distraction or reminding them of a coping skill or alerting an adult who says, we need to get eyes on this person.
Yeah.
I mean, it could absolutely be life-saving, and what, not only in the crisis, but also what about the prevention piece?
Yeah. And how great if it had the kid's safety plan built in. It was like, okay, Doug, remember, the first thing you said you wanted to do is to play Tetris.
Okay, so we're going to bring up Tetris.
We're going to bring up Tetris, on your phone. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Kind of amazing. Now, I think we might be at time, right?
Yep. If you want to start wrap it up and maybe tell us about the event that's going to be happening later today if people want to tune in for the live stream.
Sure. Well, we are so excited to have Jonathan here as our lecturer for the evening. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you'll be sharing with us?
Yeah. So I'm going to be showing some pictures, and I'm going to have some words, and I'm going to have some links.
Yes.
And basically, I'm going to talk about different ways that we can think about social media, some of the things that are happening around kids, and suicide and self-harm and cyberbullying. And then we're going to have this great conversation because I'm lucky enough to have genius people like Beth and Desmond who are going to talk about what they do and talk about what I said.
So we hope that if you can't make it in person, if you make it in person, we are providing hors d'oeuvres. We haven't figured out how to bridge the digital divide there yet. But for those of you who can't, we welcome you to join us on live stream, pop some popcorn, and come be part of the conversation with us.
Awesome.
Cool. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thanks.